And we're trying to start to aggregate some of those links to some of these blogs that are good resources on the IN2LEX. There's a Startup Advantage section on IN2LEX, and we're starting to, and I'm sure you'll have some to add tonight, Paul, that will add to that, but we'll try to get you guys linked into good sources for this.
Another idea, I work in web marketing, so a couple of those ideas. One is blogs that are opposing, like your own blog with an opposing viewpoint with a link to their blog. Sometimes it's far more powerful than a comment, because they'll see the permalink that says, what is it they have to say? They therefore are not done when they read your comment. They go to your blog and you've worked hard on some other good stuff. They subscribe to you and become part of an ongoing engagement with you as opposed to just the one-time comment. That's one, if that works for my clients in other ways, it would work here too. And the other is ego searching. Might be a good idea to make a post that says what I would say if I had a meeting with Joe Smith, and actually create a post and then plant it in Google for them to find.
Very cool. Why not? Why not build much of your pitch online and elicit feedback? Find a way to get it in front of them electronically. It's hard. I will tell you, most of them will say they don't read business plans or even unsolicited two-page summaries. But there are places, first of all, now, where you can submit them. So start by using the crowd as a way of getting the feedback. And I love the idea of getting the permalinks so that you become part of that sort of search thread. And then ideally you've got a call to action that will get them to start to follow you. That's important. One of the things I didn't mention when I talked about what's hot, because I focused on two things on the same line, crowdsourced investing. Again, I read something just today about it. I'll see if I can put something up. There's a new group called Profound, profound.com, and the idea is they use the crowd to recommend ideas, and then the crowd actually invests. Interesting concept. I like the idea of crowdsourcing for a lot of things. Investing, though, comes with a special set of regulations. And the SEC, while it has sort of turned a blind eye to a lot of crowdsourcing stuff, there's already evidence that they're starting to take aim at these folks that aren't in compliance with fundraising requirements. And those regulations are in place to protect, typically in the past, to protect investors from the unscrupulous folks who would take your money and promise lots of things and then not deliver. But what easier way to do that than create something on the web where it has to be true and sell it and take their money. So, as you can imagine, the SEC, I think, is going to start to take a hard look at compliance with respect to crowdsourcing funding. So, interesting concept. I think it may come with either some real restrictions. Because you can be, as long as you're what's the term, a qualified investor, which means you have to meet certain hurdles, then they don't worry about it. But most crowdsourcing is small investments from large numbers of people as opposed to large investments from small number of people. So this was my my sort of short list of reading, and unfortunately it's not in a great format for you to simply click on, but you can actually get to this presentation. I'll tell you how you can get to this presentation online, so you can look at it for yourself. But if you don't know who Ron Conway, Paul Graham, Brad Feld, and folks like that are, as soon as you find one of them, you're going to find most of them. They all have blogs. They don't always agree. In fact, there's some great conversations about the differences amongst them and where they think the market is going. Most of that top group, I would say, are more traditional VCs, larger investments. If you took that group right there, there's probably $1 trillion worth of market capital investment because it's all the Googles and Facebooks and the who's who. The group down below are sort of the newcomers. It's Dave McClure and 500 Hats, First Round Capital, which is out of Boston, I believe. Chris Saka and Aiden Sencut, these are all Southern California guys. Mike Maples is a Google guy who started his own small fund. Some great sites. If you only go to one site, go to Venture Hacks, and Venture Hacks and its sort of sister site, Angel List, is the starting place for everything else. The two guys behind Venture Hacks have a great, if you go to their archives, they've got a list of everything they've ever done, which is about 4 years of blogging, and detailed blogging and informed blogging with feedback and links to lots of other sources. Start there. Start with the guys from Venture Hacks. There's one called The Funded. You can join The Funded. You have to prove to them that you're the CEO or founder of a startup. You can then share your feedback or learn from others as to what investors are like, what the good ones are, the bad ones are. There's even some banned ones out there. Most of the VCs supposedly aren't allowed to become members. And there's some fairly sort of honest and raw conversation about the personalities of VCs on the fund, as well as some good information about what you need to be prepared. There's a new one called Chubby Brain, which is still in beta, I believe, but it's starting to open up in terms of content. That's got some good information about fundraising. And TechCrunch is more just about what's going on in the marketplace and who's funding whom. 3 places where I found great documents, and these are the websites themselves. So SeriesSeed.com, VCReadyLaw.com has an extraordinary series of, I think, 12 separate blogs that dissect the terms of term sheets for VCs. It goes into excruciating detail, complete with links and supports. Just an excellent document. And then another guy that blogs a lot, has great information, is Startup Company Logger. And then lastly, if time or location permits, seek out some of these startup schools or accelerators. I will say to you, not only would you learn something, but you will get, if you can ever get inside the tent with one of these folks, you'll get introduced to a group of investors and other successful serial tech entrepreneurs that will increase your likelihood of succeeding more than any other action. I don't think it's for most people. I think it's hard to get in, but if you had the chance to do it, I mean, I'm underwear older than most of these folks. But I would do it because I'll tell you, the chance to sit in classes that are being delivered by Brad Felt or Paul Graham, and the kind of people they run with and bring in, I wouldn't say it assures your success, because nothing's a sure thing, but it would amplify your opportunities tremendously. That's all I got. One last. Yep.
Are you ready for questions?
Love questions.
I have 2. Will you indulge me?
Absolutely.
And the first one is there any point in trying to start a business that's not tech related?
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't spend enough time talking about that. I actually, tech is sort of in vogue, and it's what I'm spending my time in. But some of the best businesses aren't tech businesses. In fact, coming from the tech world, a great number of my friends have sort of gotten rid of the shackles of technology and gone back into basic bricks and mortar business, and they're having more fun and making more money. So, yeah, I would say so. I think more people understand.
Really, because it sounds like what you're talking about, these investors, these angels and VC people, it sounds to me like they're looking for the next big tech thing.
They are. And I will tell you, if you think about the most enormous successes that have taken place in the last 2 decades financially, if you look at the market cap of companies 20 years ago versus the market cap of companies today, the people that are at the top are almost without exception, technology I mean, when you get companies that didn't exist 5 years ago, that now have market caps that exceed airlines that have been around for 75 years, that have big iron parked everywhere. And the example I use, only because I know it well, is Air Canada, which is Canada's national airline, been around forever. So when I go talk to some people, I put up the Air Canada logo, and then I put up the Bulldog logo in the little thing. It's Zynga, you guys. And I say, well, do you recognize two logos? And everybody nods with the Air Canada. I say, well, what about this one? And some people nod, but a lot don't. Well, Zynga's market cap, Zynga didn't really exist 5, 7 years ago.
2 years.
Exceeded Air Canada a year ago, 2 years ago. And
I think
now
they're only 2 years old, 3 years old.
3 years ago.
2,700 employees.
So there's a huge attraction, but that doesn't mean to say we all can live, without bricks and mortar business.
But those investors aren't necessarily,
But
they're looking,
they're not going to look for that.
right, that's what
But
they're looking
there
for.
are
fast.
there are certainly venture capitalists, there's private equity, and there are banks, and I would say there's an awful lot of high net worth individuals that would much rather invest in something they understand.
Well, that leads me to my next question.
Yep.
You're talking about smart down money. I have a sort of a different take on the meaning of that. How do you evaluate the IQs of your investors? Because I've been involved in 2 very bloody and unpleasant startups that died because the investors thought we should turn a profit within 2 years. How do you weed those people out?
I don't know what you do. The sooner you can get to profit, the better.
Well, of course, but
But is it a reasonable assumption? I think one of the things you need to do, and one of the things I didn't talk about, was once you get to the short list with an investor or get serious and start talking about terms, the number of conversations that take place is unbelievable. Again, I just read something where somebody sort of documented the number of conversations that they and their staff had with their ultimate investor. And it started with 40 phone calls, then 30 face-to-face meetings, then 20 presentations, whatever it was. And they said by the time that it was done, the investors knew as much about the business as the founders did, and as much about the numbers or more than the founders did. And that there should be no surprises when, if you're following your business plan, 2 years from now you're not turning a profit because we agreed it was all about achieving market domination first, and then
we're doing
whatever it
consumer
is.
packaged goods, licensed consumer packaged goods, manufacturing them. And in order to get them manufactured and get them sold, just that one cycle of going to market and banging on doors, that's more than 2 years.
So the lead time for getting ready to go.
So you've got to find an investor that understands that cycle,
Oh, they
what
all
that
said
cycle
they
looks
did.
like.
I want to make a comment, just kind of on what Donna said.
Yeah.
And you made an excellent point, is, because we've been involved in this, is to find investors that, your example of somebody that hates golf, don't even go any further. They got more money than God, but don't go any further because it's not going to be a good, healthy marriage. And that's the most valuable thing I've learned, is there's high net worth individuals out there, there's VC firms, there's all sorts of sources, and might get infatuated with your idea and your concept, but at the end of the day, if they don't really understand it or have some level of passion, but I think knowledge of the industry you're getting into, it's suicidal because their expectations won't be the same as yours, and you won't be able to be on the same page.
I would say another thing too is making sure that you're constantly communicating so that there's no surprises, so that at the end of 2 years or a year, if you do an annual report to them, they don't expect one thing and see another. And the more closely aligned your original objectives were with what it is you're delivering, along with commentary as to where the variations are, the easier it is. But you really they have to know each other. The other thing you do is, and I said get to know them. Go talk, ask them, who else have you invested in? And go talk to them. Honestly.
Get their references.
Well, yeah. It's like a marriage. In fact,
Totally
a lot of times they'll say it's worse than a marriage. You spend more time with your VCs than you do your spouse. Other questions?